Would you come with me to France? We could dance on the Champs-Élysées. Let's take a chance on a more.
Good day, and welcome to Notes and Notions from the Writing Desk. I'm your host, Joanne de Simone, and I'm so happy to be back in this beautiful, brand new studio. And I always thank LTV East Hampton for this opportunity and for continuing the work of public access. It is truly an essential to all of us. And again, Jim and Carolyn Conlon, thank you for allowing me to use your beautiful song, Isn't That What Love Is For my theme song. And as I do every single day of my life, I send my good tidings and best wishes to Mr. Steven Spielberg. And I do that because I look forward to introducing him to my Metro Cats and other interesting characters. I know it'll be the beginning of beautiful friendships. Now, before I introduce our wonderful guest today, I would like to mention that now on Amazon, collaboration with Sandra Kay. She's an actor and a hot yoga instructor, and also a host right here on Cafe with Sandra Kay. It's an instructional and inspirational yoga book with poses, inspirational messages, and a place for your journal. And also, just released this week, poetry book, collaborated with Chaim Mizrahi of Hello Hello, right here on LTV, poet, master artist, and musician. So we look forward to that. And the very last thing is, please join us on at Ashawag Hall on April 16th to 18th, where Chaim will be presenting his work, and I am the guest reader on Sunday. So that'll be a lot of fun. And now we have a very special guest here today, Bill Goldstein. Yes, he is a lawyer turned sports executive turned humorist, very humorist. It's wonderful, and he has, how do we describe it? An ocean of content in many genres.
We get a little content. We get a little content.
A lot. But you have to check out BillGoldstein.com for starters, and then please, his podcast is very, very interesting. It's called Not That You Asked, right?
Go, yeah.
And he's got blogs and books, and this is the book that I read. It's called Skip the Funeral. It's really hilarious, and we have some great stories with celebrities, sports figures. So let me I have to ask you. The title came from something to do with your granddad.
Yeah.
So let's hear it.
Yeah, the title is the title of the first essay in the book.
Yes.
And it's a story about priorities. I'm in college about 300 years ago. And of course, in those days, no cell phones or anything, and calls between my parents and I were rare. They were expensive, and you got a call from your parents, you thought something was wrong.
Absolutely.
Anyway, and the phone, of course, was on the corridor, and it might ring for half an hour before somebody picked it up. But somebody did pick it up. I get a shout down the hall. I got a phone call. I come to the phone, a little nervous. They say, I think it's your father. I get on the phone. I say, Pa, is everything all right? He says, yes, son. Everything's just fine. He said, I'm calling because we're going to be giving a 90th birthday party for your grandfather. I know what a busy boy you are. So I'm calling you 6 weeks in advance. Here's the date. Now, my parents lived outside of Boston. I was in Rochester, New York, 300 or 400 miles. But I love my grandfather. He was a character, a real character, and of course I wanted to be there. So I say to my father, "Well, look, I'll check my schedule, and I'll get right back to you." He says, "No." He says, "Check now." He says, "I'll hold." He didn't like putting things off, yeah? Okay, Pa. I run back to the room. I check my schedule. I go back to the phone. I don't know how to tell him this because the news is not good. I got a conflict.
Hey.
I was pledging a fraternity. In Rochester, the winter was horrible. This was just in spring. There was the big weekend when everybody had big parties. I was expected to be there. And I had a date with a girl I'd been chasing since I got there. I was a freshman. This was now March. It's September. I said, Pa, I just don't think I can make it because of this party, and they expect me to be there. Now, my father was not an explosive man, but he could be sarcastic, you know.
Yeah.
So after a pause, he says to me, tell me, fraternity boy, when your grandfather dies, will you make time to come to the funeral? I say, Pa, how can you ask me that? Of course I'll come to the funeral. He says, I'll tell you what. Skip the funeral. Come to the 90th. You won't be able to give him a hug at his funeral or tell him that you love him.
Yeah, that's the line.
So that's the line. That's how we did. And I did go to the party. I never did go out with that girl, and it was all the right thing to do.
It was the right.
And it taught me about priorities. So
Priorities, yeah.
It's a catchy little title.
No,
and,
it's a
and,
wonderful
and it's a great
title.
story.
But I wanted everyone to know where the title came from, and I know there are a lot of great stories in this book, but you must tell us about Rudy.
Rudy.
You know, Rudy.
Well, you know, I had a business
and I
called...
don't mean Valley.
Yeah, I know. This isn't Rudy Valley. There won't be too many people even remember who Rudy Valley was, unfortunately. But I had a business called Sports Etc. We put on big events, most notably the Virginia Slims event at Madison Square Garden every year was my event for 20, 30 years. We also had an agency where we represented corporate clients, purchased sponsorships for them in other people's events, and put on events for them. I had a client who every year had a huge entertainment event for his best clients, and he always wanted a 5-star speaker, the hottest speaker we could find. This was, I think, in 2007, the summer of 2007. And at that time, Rudy Giuliani was the hottest speaker on the circuit.
Yeah,
he had announced for president. He was ahead in the polls because of his name recognition and fundraising because of that.
America's mayor.
And he was hot. I knew his agent. His demands were crazy. I think we paid him over $100,000. Private jet, 5 or 6 rooms, all the rest. Well, we paid the freight, but we were demanding, and we made him. He couldn't just fly in a half hour before the speech, give a speech, and take a few questions and leave. He had to do a great deal more than that. But we would pay, and the deal went down. I do a site visit before the event. I fly. The site of the event was the Manor Richelieu, which is a gorgeous spot on the St. Lawrence River in Canada, north of Quebec City.
Lovely.
But to get from the airport in Quebec City to where this place is was a road like this, yeah? Terrible drive, which I experienced personally. So I call his agent back, and I said, look, we'll get you the twin engine private jet if you insist, but that means he's going to have to fly into Quebec City, and he's going to have to make the ride up to the facility, and I just made it, and I'm telling you, he's not going to like that ride. And there's a private airport 5 minutes from the site. So why don't we dumb down the plane a little bit? Well, he was so afraid of Rudy that he wouldn't even consider going to him with that request. He said, no, Bill, you gotta get him the big jet, 2 engines, so forth. Okay, we did. The day of the event, we got a driver who's picking him up. I'm called, he's on the way, we're 5 minutes away, blah, blah, blah. I come out to greet him, gets out of the car, he's furious because of the ride. He says, that's a terrible ride. He said, why couldn't you do this in Quebec City itself? You have to do it out here. I said, look, there's a private airport nearby. I told you, I told your agent, but he was too intimidated to ask. Anyway, He rolled with it eventually. We had him back down in a few hours. He did a long photo session with everybody. He signed all his books. He gave a nice speech. He took questions for 40, 50 minutes afterwards. He sat for dinner after that.
Right, yeah.
Now he's finally done. Yeah. He's got his posse with him. And they got a humidor, a big cigar smoker, Rudy, yeah? And the speech is over, and they go out to the boardwalk, which was adjacent to the hotel over the river, gorgeous spot to have, a smoke. Okay, I'm done for the night.
Right.
I'm about to go up to my room. Except the CEO comes dashing down, spots me, and with a book of Rudy's, he says, one of our guests neglected to get his book signed by Rudy, leaving early in the morning. Can you go find him and get him to sign the book? So, okay, now I got to go bother the guy again. But I got to do it. I go out to the boardwalk. He sees me coming. He says, boy, you don't quit, do you? I've done more for you than I've done for anybody. I said, look, I make my prayerful sign. I said, I got a guest. I said, can I get you just to scribble? He said, sit down and have a cigar with us. Then I'll sign your book.
Wow.
I said, Rudy, I don't smoke. He disagrees with me. He says, sit down. I did.
That's how
he
he
pulls
is,
out a
right?
cigar, like this.
Yeah.
We talk for a while. He asks me what I've learned while I've been here. I'd never been there either, and this is the St. Lawrence River. It was part of the St. Lawrence Seaway,
Right.
which they were all very proud of. They call it the Highway H2O. You can get from the Atlantic to Duluth, Minnesota,
Yes.
through
The St. Lawrence Seaway.
That's right.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah,
I explained. Oh, he thought that was fine. Blah blah blah. It all ended well, and that's the Rudy tale. Now, of course, I think he's besmirched his role in history a little bit, but that's a matter of opinion.
But didn't he say something like it wasn't worth the trip, or something like that? Did he say something?
No. He was angry at his agent.
Oh, angry
for
at
not,
his agent.
for not telling him
okay.
about the local airport.
Oh,
but
okay.
because
I
he
got
was
it.
so intimidating,
Yeah.
And that's why I never became an agent, incidentally. I'm
Yeah.
a lawyer, and everybody asks me, how
But
come
he
you never became?
he was intimidating in
Yeah, but what
person, right?
happens is that decisions get made for the wrong reason.
Right.
And that's why being an agent is such a job that I didn't want, because you got to make a bad decision because you're afraid of the guy, and in the meantime, it spins out as a mistake. So anyway.
Well, but all your years with all these people, you were able to handle all that with.
Well,
I'm
not intimidated by Rudy or any of them, but I've been around people like that for a long time.
Yeah.
But it was a good engagement, and that was probably his finest hour was right around then.
Yeah, and
then he cratered in the polls. He did lousy in Florida, and that was that.
And now he's kind of irrelevant at this point in history as we go. But I also I'm a very, very big fan of the Carvilles, Mary Matlin and James Carville.
Yeah.
And he's no nonsense, right? He's a no nonsense.
Both of them.
But of course they're. She's an independent now. She actually went from Republican to independent. So he said it's been a slow process from the opposite ends. But I know we'd like to hear the story about.
Well, maybe the audience isn't as familiar as we are. James Carville and Mary Matlin are married. They're both pundits. She's diehard Republican. He's diehard Democrat. Somehow they've stayed married for a long time.
Yeah.
And they're perfect speakers for stuff that I was doing, because they got 1,000 stories and they ham and egg it with each other in an easy way. Anyway, we had them for one of my events. They did a nice job with anecdotes and poking fun at each other, and their mentors. She was working at the time, I think, for Cheney. Anyway, then the Q&A comes. And most of the questions are softballs about this or that. But somebody finally stands up and asks the question that everybody is wondering, but he does it in a way that's nasty. He says, tell me, which is it? Are you cynical about politics or marriage? Well, Carver wasn't happy with the question.
No.
And he looked at me. I was off stage. He looked at me like, who let this guy in?
Oh,
And anyway, he answered it, that they're able to compartmentalize, et cetera. And he skated through the question. And we talked about it afterwards. And, I said, look, that's why we hire you. I mean, that's, you got to anticipate that question.
Yeah, that's what I said.
And frankly, be proud of the answer. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because you guys disagree on so much, but you're happily married, and then that says something, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
anyway, they were both interesting.
They
guests
had a
there.
child. I remember when they had a baby, and everybody wondered how.
Well,
no. That was good.
yeah.
But we have there's so much in this book and on your podcast. I'm going to repeat again, BillGoldstein.com, and also Not That You Ask is the podcast. But there was another story with a very funny line from your Gore Vidal story. Yes, and there are many more. We'll get into more, but these are the ones that I chose. Just ask.
Well, they're good choices. This is another
these are
quickie.
great.
This is a quickie, but it's now Gore Vidal again. People may not recall. He's gone now, but he was a great writer and bon vivant, and of course a liberal, gay, fascinating guy.
Yes.
And he's at an event of ours.
Right.
And Q&A comes, and somebody asks him, he says, hard to predict, but what do you suppose would have happened had Khrushchev been assassinated instead of JFK? And Vidal thinks for a moment, and he says, well, with history it's hard to predict. He says, but I think it's safe to say that Aristotle Onassis would not have married Mrs. Khrushchev.
Right. Isn't that a great line?
I don't think there's a better one yet.
Yeah,
that's great.
he was really quite.
Now,
he was something in
if
his
people
day.
don't recall, but Nina Khrushchev
Yeah.
didn't look a whole lot like Jackie Kennedy.
No, not at all. She looked like one of those commercials for Dave Ebb. So, tell us more that's in the book, or talk to us. We have some time, so talk to us about your life as a sports executive and anything, because it's all interesting. It's all interesting.
Well, I was a lawyer as a young kid.
Yeah.
This was the early 70s. I had hair down on my backside. I was living in Berkeley, kind of a hippie lawyer.
That's great.
But as a kid, I was a pretty fair athlete and always fascinated by sports. I had a close friend who had gone to law school with me, who was fancied himself the next Norman Mailer. And the sports business was burgeoning at the time, and he knew how attracted I was to it. He said, why don't you try to get in the sports business? Anyway, long story short, I tried to do that from afar. I wrote letters, I wrote articles, I did what I could from Berkeley. I realized I had to come to New York. And I didn't know very much about New York. I grew up in Boston. I was broke. I lived on 58th and 1st in a walk-up, a little studio. I think I paid about $140 a month.
Right.
It was right in Midtown, though, so I could walk every place.
Perfect.
The subway fare at the time was a quarter. It was 1974.
Yeah.
But a quarter bought me lunch. A hot dog and sauerkraut on the street was lunch. So anyway, I eventually got a job in Madison Square Garden with their college basketball department.
Right.
But that sounds like, oh, that's quite a job. Well, the truth of it is, 1974, the Garden's college basketball department was nearly moribund. College basketball in New York City used to be huge in the 40s and the 50s, along with horse racing and boxing. Those were the three biggest sports in Manhattan at that time. But the teams in the metropolitan area in the early 70s were lousy. But the Garden let them play double headers in the main hall as kind of a political payola to help with their property taxes and to demonstrate that they were supporting the community. It gave them an ability to argue for lower taxes successfully. So they had double headers like Manhattan and Fordham was one, and Seton Hall versus Iona, and these teams were lousy at the time. And they were drawing 800-900 people to an arena that seats 20,000. That's a lonely bit of business. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, the fella, and they had one guy who was trying to sell tickets to show you the priority they put on this job, and the slot that I occupied. The guy who had the job before me was the bartender in the press lounge.
Oh,
that's how we earned a living. That's the guy I was a lawyer.
Yeah, right.
But hey, I had a desk and a phone in Madison Square Garden, and I was over the moon. But you know, like any profession that doesn't have a runway, you know, you want to be a lawyer, you go to law school. Yeah, you want to get in the sports business, or you want to get in the movie business, or you want to get in the entertainment, or any career where there isn't a runway. How do you do it? I get asked lots of times, you know, how should my son get into the sports business? How do you do it? Yeah. Well, you do it, you know, with luck and pluck. That's how you do it, you know. And you need time. So the garden job ended. I did a good job, but they invited me back next fall, but there was no job for me.
But
I was out of work again.
That was dry dock right there.
Yeah. But I got a reference from the Garden to the NBA, National Basketball Association, which just had a new commissioner, Larry O'Brien. People think of Larry O'Brien, they think of him now because his name is on the trophy for the NBA. But O'Brien worked for Johnson and Kennedy in the White House. He was the guy who was counting votes when they were in Hyannisport. The Kennedys, he was in Washington counting votes. And worked for Johnson as well. And at the time, I used to get jobs that I wasn't qualified for.
Wow,
and this is an example of one. See, because O'Brien needed somebody as a wingman who could help him, who could figure out problems, who had experience.
Right.
But I didn't have any experience. I had screwed around as a lawyer in Berkeley. I'd come to New York. I'd sold some tickets for the Garden. But I didn't know how to solve problems. I didn't know how to deal with owners and players and networks, and it didn't take Larry long to realize that I wasn't going to be much use.
Oh.
And I got frozen out. I stopped getting invited to meetings, and ultimately got fired.
Oh.
And I was out of work again.
Okay.
But I don't begrudge him because I wasn't qualified for the job.
Exactly. So.
But I figured, you know what I mean. You got to fake it to make it sometimes. But I didn't make it anyway. I was out of work again. By then I was married. Thank God my wife was working. Mm-hmm. And there was something called team tennis. There still is, but no one knows much about it. But Billie Jean's thing was World Team Tennis, and they had a franchise in Long Island called the New York Sets, played in the Nassau Coliseum. But they wanted to move the matches into the Garden. And they were asking the Garden, did they know anybody who could help them sell tickets? And I was out of work again. And I got referred by a friend at the Garden to Larry King, who was Billie Jean's husband at the time.
Yes,
not that Larry King,
right.
But a nice guy who was the president of the team.
Very nice.
He interviewed me. At the end of the interview, he says, "I'm good with you, but you gotta meet Billy." Now, I'm good with you. That just meant that I was a warm body, you know, that he could credibly sell to the owner as somebody who had experience selling tickets. He wasn't fussy either. Come to the apartment, he says, tonight to meet Billy. Okay, tie and jacket, get to their place. They had an apartment in Lincoln Center in one of the high-rises there.
Hey.
I get buzzed up, knock on the door. I'm expecting somebody to open the door, lead me to her or somewhere else, and she opens the door.
Ah, yeah, right.
And she says to me, she looks at me, she says, first thing she says is, "Where's your stuff?" I said,
Yeah.
my stuff.
Yeah.
What stuff?
What stuff?
She says, your tennis gear, man. We're going to have a hit. Didn't Larry tell you?
Initiation. Right?
Well, I said, well, not that I remember. Of course, he hadn't told
Yeah.
me. But you see, Billie Jean is one of these people that you cannot phase. You know, nothing phases her. So she still wants to have a hit, right? And she doesn't care about how I play tennis. This is just a way to test my
course.
nerves and whatever. So she yells to the back of the apartment. She says, Larry, she says, you're about the same size. She says, Larry, fix him up with some gear. Send him down to the court. I'm thinking, there's a tennis court in the building? And there was. That's why they live there. Anyway, he gives me some tennis shoes that don't fit. I got my black socks on, a pair of shorts. He says, just take your coat and tie off, and you can play in your shirt, and go down and try to have some fun. I'm thinking, try to have some fun. I mean, I'm sweating bullets already.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went down to the court. I did manage to get a few balls back.
And stay alive.
All the while, she's asking me questions. I understand you're a lawyer. Why did you give it up? What do you know about selling? Do you like selling? What don't you like about it? What are you going to do when the athletes are difficult? What are you going to do when I'm difficult? All the while, I'm chasing golf. I'm chasing tennis balls.
Tennis balls.
Anyway, 45 minutes of this. Finally, she jumps over the net like she's just won Wimbledon. She says,
Yeah.
I like you, Larry likes you. If you're still interested, you got a job.
Well,
This is Billie Jean King, one of the most famous people in the
really
world.
Great.
So.
But you know, we're running out of time. Will you come back again? Because there's so much to talk about.
If you'll have me, sure.
Yeah, no,
sure.
it's great. But I'm going to close now. I look forward to sharing time again with Bill and other guests on Notes and Notions from the Writing Desk. Please remember to take note that the notion of love is universal. Let your love light shine through to everyone you meet. So until next time, ciao.
I hear the castanets are calling. They have this dance, por favor. And I don't care where we are, as long as I am there with you. 'Cause there's a place in the world for those who say I love you. And if we wish upon a star, we'll never be alone. 'Cause we could travel here and far. We could stay right here at home.